Welcome back to my channel. I thought today I would do a little chat and paint with you as I am trying to get back into the mood of creating again after having been away on a trip. So today, join me as I chat about art block, getting out of a funk, and paint in my art journal. This is the Fern Book, as I like to call it, and I have a playlist on my channel all about how I made this book, and it's covers completely from scratch and all sorts of different kinds of papers like packing paper, tracing paper, random papers that I have found through thrifting or just in my stash, and I really enjoy working in it, but sometimes the papers can be challenging because they either are an interesting color or a texture that's weird, or they handle media in unexpected ways. So this is just a really thin packing paper from like an Amazon order or something like that. And I had painted on the other side, I believe in just watercolor, and it bled through like crazy, as you can see. So I decided I'm going to use my acrylic gouache, my favorite Holbein's, to paint something on the back because they are nice and opaque, and I know that the bleed through of that watercolor won't affect this painting at all. So in the what is the word? Not realm, but you know what I mean. In the same idea of talking about artist block, the thing that I am painting on this page is inspired by quilt blocks. My mom was a quilter, and so quilts are something that's pretty special to me, but it's also a challenge for me to paint because they are more precise, and I tend to do more freeform, very organic, lots of flowers like you can see on the opposite page here. So this is a challenge to me, but working in those kinds of ways, either that are challenging and that are precise, actually can be super helpful for me. So I'm going to be talking about artist block today and artist funks and how you can kind of work through them. So we went away in July on a big family trip. We drove across the country out to Calgary. It was about a 35-hour drive one way for our little family, even with our cat, and I did not get much art making in. I did pack a little art kit, and I did try to work in my journal, at least kind of just making notes each day and gluing some things in to remind myself about what we did on our trips, but art making wise, it was very minimal. And that's just because we had a very busy schedule, and making art while driving is actually pretty challenging. So I pretty much for 2.5 weeks or so, including maybe more than that because packing and then unpacking took up quite a lot of time, I was not making art. And so going from making it almost daily to this 2.5, 3 week chunk of time where I wasn't making art, it definitely threw off my groove. And I have been struggling to get back into the flow of art making. And I know some people would just say, you just have to start. So that is true. But I find it a struggle to start when I have small pockets of time that I already have for my art making, and I find that I'm wasting those pockets of time because I'm sitting there trying to figure out what to make, what to do, looking ahead at my like video ideas or video scheduling, feeling not inspired to make anything. And that's where making these geometric things can come in handy because I had to think a little bit and do some math in terms of drawing out my grid pattern, but I don't have to think very hard once I get started, and I'm just essentially coloring in the lines. And doing a practice like that definitely helps me because I don't have to be in that creative flow to do something like this. And that's actually why I got into bookbinding in the first place. Well, maybe not intentionally, but bookbinding rescued me out of my art funks because I did not need to be in the creative flow to cut paper down to size, to sew a book together, to, especially if I was using a cover that I already had of a vintage book or something, I didn't even have to do much work to build out a cover. And when I decided to make covers from scratch, if I was just covering them in book cloth versus collaging or painting on them, again, I didn't have to be in a creative mindset. It was more of a, I guess you could say, manufacturing mindset. I don't know if manufacturing is the right word either, but you kind of understand what I mean, I hope, because I didn't have to be in creative flow. However, once I started, just the tasks of like getting my fingers going and the tactileness of touching paper and cutting cardboard and things like that helped satisfy the creative need that my brain has. So that is something that painting these little quilt blocks is able to do as well. But what happens when I don't have the ability to be able to whip up some of these geometric designs or even be making books? That is kind of what I've been facing this last week. We are currently working through some major stresses as the engine on our truck blew, which has definitely put a hiccup in our just day-to-day plans and obviously our finances. And it's making me long for having that rest in my brain of going and doing something creative where I can kind of turn off the world. But the stress is just high enough that it's not allowing me to get in a creative mind space. So one thing I have noticed that when I get in those funks where my mind is too preoccupied by something else, and even the process of doing a geometric painting like this or binding a book or tearing up paper isn't helping me, I have turned to two other comfort zones. One is organizing things or sorting or decluttering. And two is watching studio tours. So this afternoon, I spent most of our Saturday afternoon watching studio tours while sorting through my stash of ephemera and collage bits and downsizing it because I have a lot and I just don't need it. And the nice thing about it is I don't have to think terribly hard. I'm actually, because my mind has had to make some big decisions, it's now in the flow of decision making. So I could easily decide to eliminate certain papers from my stash quite easily because my brain was already being well practiced in decision making this week. And watching studio tours at the same time just helped fill that kind of inspiration need that my brain was having. And I didn't feel like, oh, I need inspiration for art making. I just wanted to be surrounded by art stuff a little bit. And so that's why I love a studio tour and getting a glimpse in how people structure their practice. But one of the things about taking the time to go through all of my ephemera and bits that's actually really great is I get to downsize my stash because I don't need as much as I have. and I'm only partway through and I still have way more to go through. But the other part is that means I have all of these, essentially I have a giant pile of things that I'm going to break up and create into collage kits and be able to get them out of my studio and into yours. So there's new collage kits that are going up in the shop, and that is something that's going to help me get out of my creative funk or my stress brain and hopefully help inspire you in your art making process. I have also found in the past that I can just go and do some mark making pages when I get in these creative blocks, and all of those pages generally turn into collage kits as well that I have up in my shop. So in these kits, you're going to get all sorts of things that I have acquired over the years through just thrifting or sticker bundles or things like that, but also all kinds of different hand-painted pages that have repetitive marks for the most part, or stamping or things like that on them. Some of them I've even taken old sheet music and printed some of my artwork onto it and my hand-painted flowers and things like that, and I think they're really pretty. I also wanted to just touch on some little lists I have here of ideas in case you don't enjoy painting quilt blocks or tearing up papers for your books or facing your stash of things, but you do want to get out of that creative funk that you might be in. Here are a few ideas that I have come up with that you could steal and save for that day that you are facing an artist block, but you still know that you need to get in the studio and do something because your brain needs it. And generally, these little things can turn into something productive. It satisfies your brain, and you can walk away from that moment in your studio feeling like, yes, I actually accomplished something, even if it was just tidying. So to start, you could clean your studio space, your desk. A cluttered space is a cluttered mind, says some people, or something like that. But I do find that when I do a studio cleanup or a little bit of a reorganize, it definitely does help inspire me, because I might find like an old painting that I'm inspired by, or a tool that I forgot I had, or some cool paper that I want to use. Things like that. Some art materials that have just slipped behind or to the back of a drawer or behind the shelf or something like that. A good reorganizing or a good clean always helps and definitely makes me want to get back into the mindset of making. Sometimes I take my art journal and I will just start tossing down some paint and some backgrounds, because I don't really love doing any journaling on a blank white page. So generally I'll use my acrylic inks and water, because then once they're dry, they're permanent and I don't have to worry about any layers on top lifting them up like I would if I had used, say, watercolor or some other water-soluble medium. But I will throw down a neutral color like ochre or some of the siennas or green or something like that, and just kind of add a little bit of a wash of color to backgrounds of pages. Sometimes I'll do a whole bunch of backgrounds in a row, and it just sets me up for the next time that I actually am in a creative mindset, that I can start right into a page and not have that fear of the blank page facing me. I also have a glue book that it's an old, I should actually do a video about it. It is an old text block that I had cut out of an old book that I reused the cover on. And I tore out every couple of pages. I would tear out a page just to give myself some room in the book so I don't have a big crocodile wedge book when I'm done. But all of my little bits when I'm doing collage work, I keep a little box that has little bits. I don't have a hard fast rule, but they tend to be at least bigger than a centimeter by a centimeter, but generally smaller than 3 inches by 3 inches. And some of them are just so pretty and I can't give them up, and I don't always know what to do with them. So some of them I just fill a whole page on this text block, gluing them down, and later I could peel them up if I wanted to, or I could cut that page up and make something out of it, add it to an art journal, make a tag, anything like that. But for now, it just lives in that text block. And I will just glue down bits that I have saved when I don't know what to do. Another idea is you could set up a still life with things that you have around your house. I am not one generally to remember about still lives and drawing from still life setups like that, but an artist that I love, Sandi Hester, I love her videos. She keeps a permanent still life setup in her studio space. She rotates things out from it, and generally whenever her flowers die that she has picked and have included in it, and she's got plastic fruit and different things like that, or vases, she uses that as part of her practice, her art practice. But that would be a great thing to just get your muscles moving. Try some things like contour drawing, where you only draw the outside. You could do a blind contour drawing where you don't even look at your page. You could do continuous line drawing, where you draw your whole scene in front of you without lifting your pen from like piece to piece that you're drawing. So all the lines are connected. You could do a negative space drawing, like just all these warm-ups. If you had gone to art school, there are warm-ups that you would have done in your drawing class, kind of to get you warmed up and get your flow started. The other thing you can do that's kind of in the vein of still life is paint what you had for lunch, or make a snack and paint your snack plate. And even if you're not an illustrator or a realistic artist or anything like that, you also don't even have to be painting. You could collage it, like just let that be your inspiration to just start your hands moving. You could make Franken papers. That is a video that I have where I have drawn inspiration. I've drawn inspiration from Brooke Henry's Franken papers, and it's taking different ephemera papers that you have from your stash and collage papers and just gluing them together into bigger sheets. I have a video up in here where I glued them all together in one super long strip, and then ended up tearing up that strip into smaller pieces, which then I folded into my signatures and made into a book. But that is kind of a brainless job that you can just do. It's repetitive. You just grab pieces from your stash and start gluing them together. You can do mark making, like I said. If you are one who repurposes old books, I'm sure you have text blocks sitting around. You don't even have to rip up your text blocks. Just go page by page. Start mark making. Have a mark making book, and then you have this whole resource at your hands ready, and it's all bound and easily storable, but it's all ready at your fingertips. When you are doing collage work, you have your mark making pages all done. You could print out stickers and just fussy cut them out. Sit there and fussy cut. That takes not really much brain power at all, but it becomes quite productive when you're done. I have a folder on my desktop that's called Print, and when I get freebies from like workshops that I've done or emails that I get from emails I'm subscribed to, I get a lot of little freebie things that I can print that I use in my art journals. So I just download them and I add them to that file folder, and every once in a while I will get out my sticker paper and I just have 8.5 by 11 sheets of sticker paper, and I Photoshop all of these images together to fill a 8.5 by 11 page, print them, and then I just take an evening and cut them up. That's a great thing to do. Like if you're one who can't sit and watch a show without doing something else, cutting up things like that is super helpful. And I think, the last one I have is coloring like a kid again. Get some coloring pages if you're like my kids and you ask me every day to print off a coloring page for you. Find something that's in the genre of things that you like to color. There's adult coloring books, or print something out and color it. Color it in different colorways. Like if you have color swatches that you've made, color like that. Do it all monochrome. Work on shading or work on cross hatching or different things like that. And just use that coloring page as your inspiration to just get your hands moving. So hopefully these have helped you with some ideas to get you out of that creative funk. And thanks so much for joining me today, and happy art making. See you next week. Bye.